opening theory again, use some of his preparation. He's going to be armed to the teeth at this point, having just played the World Cup, the World Rapid Team Championship. And okay, he opens with the English c4, so maybe a less theoretical battle ahead. I was going to say, do what you did in the first game, Fabiano, where you kind of got that 7-8 minute time advantage and then try and put the pressure on with white. But okay, Magnus replying with a really flexible first move.
And in the end, they were like, okay, just come to our library and then you can have open access to it.
But you're right, those years were super formative for him when his family moved there. Simon, but to your point, one of the big things about Anand has been his longevity and his ability to adapt to this changing time. It's not something that a lot of players from his generation have been able to do. He's been in the world top 10 for so many years, with Magnus's generation being at the peak as well. And I think that's been really special about his career.
Magnus has played the North Sea, hasn't he? And is this a version of North Sea, David? Or...
And I'm going to take you all the way back to the start position, because Magnus is famous for playing this opening. Looks like he's going for the modern defense, but instead of fianchettoing this bishop, he brings his knight out. And this has a really bad reputation, or at least a dodgy reputation. Magnus has had mixed results here, including losing to Michael Adams at the 2010 Olympiad. But the whole idea is to bring the black knight to the edge. It looks like an Alekhine defense. You've kind of provoked white into gaining space in the center, though, but at the cost of time. And Magnus has got an improved version of this, where here white, for example, could start attacking the knight already. Instead, after c4, he did the same thing. He provoked the white pawn to step forward, gaining space, but white's pieces are not backing up the pawns here. And look at what happened. Fabiano, instead of going for the main move, as I believe, pawn takes pawn, when the position becomes more rational, he pushed forward the 4-pawn attack, or at least a spin on that. And now, after this move, he was forced to trade queens off the board. And suddenly, if we catch up with the game, this is the current position. I think it's a disaster, and that's
no, David or Ivanka or Tanya.
Especially not with white. Is that harsh?
No, maybe just true, yeah.
I mean, the thing is, though, there'll be people at home saying, but, you know, take a look at that pawn chain. That's very nice.
Yeah, tilt adding to that as well, adding to the Magnus effect.
And so they won't necessarily choose the most aggressive openings. If he plays provocatively, they won't necessarily choose everything that's cutting edge, because after all, they're happy with the draw. Magnus has castled to the left, and poor Fabi's king.
It's violent at this point. Knight to d4 has landed, and that forces the white knight to deal with the threat of jumping in with a nasty knight fork. Knight to a3. Yeah, Simon, I think your move, it's about time. There we go. Magnus does play at f6.
Hasn't gone well. Magnus has played very provocatively. And it is Magnus who has the opening advantage. And that we did see the reason why white can't capture the pawn on f6. And Fabi, well, he's trying to exchange off pieces. But this is going to come at the cost of a pawn.
But if, for example, I were to take this knight, then a position such as this would be hopeless. Black with with a rook and 3 pawns for 2 minor pieces.
I mean, it's still terrible, but...
Rook f1. When you have to make a move like rook f1 on the board, you know that things have gone wrong already. It really feels like there should be something more in the position than capturing the e5 pawn. He retains the knight on the board on d4. White's king still in the center. You can't pick up the pawn on e5 because of the tactic that David mentioned, and the knight comes in with a check on f3.
Yeah, at the very least, you trade off a set of pawns, I guess, and I think we're headed in this direction. Ivanka, nice prediction game on point there. This has indeed happened. This is the game position, and Magnus has a very pleasant decision. He can push forward, cementing the knight on a nice outpost on f3 with a check next move, or he can just trade off after rook to d1 and simplify the position. Better minor piece as well, this knight better than white's knight, and your upper pawn, and with a safer king. Everything adds up here. He plays rook to f8 instead, just keeping the tension.
And lots of pieces are hanging.
Yeah, suddenly white does have some threats, at least. Some hope of counterplay. Black's knight in the center, that glorious, beautiful knight, is under fire. Magnus still 1 pawn up.
Got to find a way to get out of this. I mean, a 2-point deficit would be absolute disaster. You don't come back from a 2-point deficit against Magnus. Fabi's already lost the first game, and as you pointed out, the bishop jumps in, attacking the rook, defending the knight. Magnus going aggressive with the rook. He's still got that extra pawn.
Here's the ending.
Wow.
It's a repeat of the first game.
Might be not just one extra pawn soon.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I'm expecting him to try and activate the white king right now. There we go, putting pressure on the black bishop.
But this does allow Magnus to trade off the bishops. And then we get a knight and pawn ending. And you know what they say about knight and pawn endings? They're basically the same as king and pawn endings. Every single factor that is a huge consideration there, it's the same in knight endgames.
There we go. Magnus
On the board.
agrees.
Great call, Ivanka. And up on the clock as well, Magnus with an extra pawn and that 17th piece that we keep talking about.
And that will give him some hope here.
Is it time for some predictions? Do we think Fabiano is going to hold this game? It would be a miracle if he does.
I can't see him holding this. I mean, against Magnus. I mean, it's it's possible, but very unlikely.
Just keeps coming back to that whole point, right? That it's against Magnus.
Magnus, best endgame player in the world. Yesterday, I remember him winning a game against Armin in a knight and pawn endgame. Very instructive. And he knows what to do. He knows it's all about mobilizing the pieces.
We played Guess the Elo earlier. If you had to predict accuracy, the accuracy that Magnus has had in this game, I'd love to see what it is, because it almost feels like a flawless game by Black. What do you think it would be?
If the Black King is forced back to defend this pawn on c7 that the White Knight is attacking, then at least White would gain some time to go active himself. And Magnus is going for a race. We do know that H-pawns and A-pawns, those corner pawns, the rook pawns there, they are what Knights struggle against the most. And Magnus, he's trying to create a passed pawn for himself there. Forced the White King passive now, and he's getting active with his own knight. Really instructive. We talked about it earlier today. Not materialistic at all. Magnus has given away all of his material advantage here, level pawns. But suddenly the Black King is superior to the White King. The Black Knight superior to the White Knight. And some serious threats.
By Magnus Carlsen. He so quickly went into this line of a 4-piece activity, just giving up that c-pawn. And Ivanka, you were on point. We're getting an update. The accuracy, 94.8% by Magnus Carlsen in this one.
Oh, disappointing.
You should never doubt my guesses.
Just incredible stuff. So, David, he does give up the c7 pawn, but he captures the a2 pawn. So, once again, up material, but he might be losing another pawn.
So Magnus, his track record is good. And look at this. He doesn't even care about the Black e-pawn. He's got bigger fish to fry here. A5, he's getting ready to run with that one. White's b3 pawn is next a target for the Black Knight. Do you think he knows how the horsey moves?
I think he's got a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it feels like Magnus has...
To queen endgames, knowing where the queen belongs, is so difficult to find a
checkmates.
Oh.
Checkmates. Even Magnus will lose the game if you checkmate him.
It's a tough journey up there, but yeah, if you manage it, it could be done. But right now, it is Magnus's king that has marched down the board. So Fabi didn't go for that pawn on e7. He needs the knight to keep things guarded. But knight c1 is coming in. You still lose the b3 pawn.
Still, Fabi is defending knight d2, but again, it's a question of timing. You see that the knight on d2 is completely tied down, and White's pawns, they don't move. They can't do anything, and all Fabi can do is just shuffle the king from the g2 square to the f2 square. And now it's going to be Operation Pawn time.
Is it going to be Operation E-pawn time?
Yeah. Look, there you go. H5.
Maybe b6 if you want to just enjoy
E6.
yourself. Yeah, e6. Oh,
He's going
e6.
to go e5, e4, because you want to give up that e-pawn and grab the b-pawn.
E6 is the move that you play, David. The sadistic way of doing it. So just take your time, moving in one square at a time.
It's just crazy. No matter what position you give him, what middle game, end game, always his opponents seem to barely be able to move. Magnus, he just completely paralyzes them, and White's knight tied down defending the b-pawn, the king tied down, and eventually one of them is deflected at the cost of Black's e-pawn, but now it is one of those corner pawns at the h-pawn. And Harry, going to become Queen Harriet soon, Simon.
Yeah, and you can even go knight takes b3 probably and use the other one. I love the way you called it trousers legs the other day.
Trousers, yeah.
I thought that was cool. So is he going to go knight takes b3?
Yeah, I think he will.
Free pawn, pick it up.
Oh, he is. I thought it's not even sacrificing. And yeah, the trousers legs are coming down, right?
Can you go h4 here, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, always a good move. And
It's on the board.
the problem with knights is that you can only defend against his pawns from one side, and you can't jump off the board
That's
and
it.
defend from the
He
other.
resigns.
Yeah.
It's game over. Fabiano Caruana resigns, and with that, Magnus with a 2-0 lead. He did make this one look easy.